viewers, I welcome you all on my channel, The Opinion Platform. It is very interesting to see that how higher education of India is always in the discussion from the year Prime Minister Narendra Modi has joined the position of Prime Ministership in Delhi. Education has always been targeted in India, at least this has been the claim of the academics who serve in the best institutes of India as well as Europe and other best models of education. Recently, a professor of JNU who wrote a post on the Facebook, social media, and directly attacked, being very critical of the patterns private universities have escorted to in the name of promoting higher education in India. Yes, you have rightly guessed. I am sitting today with that same professor who very vocally criticized the way private universities have started to function in the name of autonomy in the field of higher education. Because in that post, what matters, at least the message which was sent across the students and academics, that how there are two kinds of autonomies. One form of autonomy which exists in the world of government institutions which are completely in the control of Indian government and state governments. Another is the autonomy which is operated, which is manipulated and which is changed according to the whims and fancies of the business tycoons, because all of us know that these private universities are largely owned and controlled by business tycoons in India. I welcome Dr. Brahm Prakash, who teaches at Arts and Aesthetics of School of Arts and Aesthetics of Jawaharlal Nehru University. Arts and Aesthetics, this center, School of Arts and Aesthetics, is considered one of the most prestigious institutes of its own kind because it entertains and trains students in the disciplines, in the subjects which are otherwise alien to our states universities and even central universities. Well, Professor, I welcome you on my channel, Opinion Platform.
Thank you so much.
I would like to know what has been, first of all, your experience, because you have studied in Bihar in a very state government education board. Then you have also studied in the central university like JNU. You had an opportunity and you have successfully etched your own mark in the European model of education. What is the basic difference you find in all these three models of education?
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me for your channel and giving me this opportunity to share some of my opinions, views, expressions. Yeah, so basically I started my journey in Bihar where I was very much a part of public education system. I went to public schools. Despite of all the some kinds of weakness, some kinds of their own kinds of difficulties, what we face that exposure and the question of access, whether you have that access and how that access matters, especially if you are coming from marginalized background, if you are coming from economically deprived background, and that exposure really matters for me in education. Education, unless you don't have equal opportunity, unless you don't have basic exposure or basic access, for many of communities who are coming from marginalized background and those kinds of deprived background, I think education will not have that role to play that education has really played in our life. So that way I can say that I'm a product of public university system, public education system largely. I did my schooling in public education, I did my university and colleges in public education, and despite all the difficulties, what I never realized that the question of access that I could have I could have actually accessed my institutions despite of their own challenges and difficulties. Yeah, I also went to Taiwan. I was in Taiwan. That was also kind of public university of Taiwan. That was National Central University. And then I went to Royal Holloway. That is also a kind of public university in UK. So, and then that when you realize that still despite of differences that one can talk about what was the model of public education in Bihar, how it differs when you come to JNU. Of course, JNU was providing you lot many things that you never had that kinds of exposure when I was studying in Bihar. Same way when you go to Taiwan, then you have again public university that has different kinds of functioning, but again do not maintain that kinds of discriminatory boundaries based on some kinds of economy or some kinds of privileges. If you have, like, if you're interested, if you really want to study, you can enter, you can qualify for those education, and you can become part of, like, you can be a student, you can be teacher, and that really becomes some important part. Now, if you are comparing with public university, then first things, it does not, like, education does not matter. Of course, education is a private, like, kind of brand or like a brand product that one can talk about. So education suddenly becoming a product, and that I also realized in UK. So in UK, like, when I used to get mail, then there was a whole idea that they will not call, like, dear students or dear researchers, you have to pay this amount of fee. They will say dear customers, that you have to pay this amount of fee. That made me realize that, oh my god. So now I am entering into very different kinds of model. So, and where, like, education is becoming almost a product, and it's going to be treated in a very different way. And then you also have very different kinds of demand. Then what ultimately matters here is that whether you have that kinds of economy, whether you have that privileges to enter into these kinds of university space or not. If you don't have that privileges, you cannot think about your education, you cannot think about this space, you don't imagine. The point is that you cannot imagine about these universities. They are there, they are very much like existing in your part of the world, they are existing in your country, but you are outcasted. Because of, not because you don't have, like, even merit. It's not a question of merit, it's not a question of education, it's just a merit of, like, that you don't have economy, you don't have that kinds of socio-economic background, and therefore those education system completely outcasting you in a, like, first kinds of criteria that no, you are outside. And therefore these things really matters for me. And when I was writing about this post, because, like, we will come to that discussion, but again,
very plain question. Most of my audience would like to know, because JNU has been in the target point from 2016, where certain kinds of slogans were brought to the fore, and they said that this is the kind of education which is being promoted in JNU. Do you yourself belong to the elite education background of, like, family culture? You teach
arts,
culture, and so many, which in India is not less than an elite consideration. Do you belong to that elite family background?
No, I don't come from elite family background. I come from very small, like, farmers family background, and again I'm coming from quote unquote other OBC kinds of background, caste background also, where, like, and I got in JNU not only because of, like, quote unquote merit. I also got in JNU because of my OBC reservation things. So I have come to JNU with reservation, and I still remember when I got admission in Chinese language, I was the last student from the list. So
that's in OBC category?
And two in the OBC category. Not in general, like, okay. So you have, like, two categories. Here you have to have, like, they used to have two categories. So one, that if you are immediately qualifying your, like, intermediate, then you will be in a kinds of 80%. And if you have, like, some delay because of, like, admission, because of, like, some career kinds of, like, break, then you will go into some 20%. So I came in 20%, and I was the last. So I can say that I was the last in the list. But again, so that, but again, like, so I don't come from elite family background. I am coming like a first person in my family who is coming to college, who is coming to university, who had this kinds of exposure. So I will say that Kila is like a first generation almost.
Before I will ask you the most important question of my channel, another most important question, since you speak so fluent English, your two books, very popular books, have been published from two of the best publishers of the world, at least all of us know. One is from Oxford University Press, that too not from India, from Agro, and another from Leftward, which was the prime focus in the World Book Fair of 2024, Body on the Barricades. So, as an author, as a communicator, as a class teacher, especially being educated in the Bihar State Board education, what kinds of feelings you have when since you have just mentioned you come from OBC background,
Yeah.
what kinds of feelings you have when you fluently end up every class speaking in English?
Yes, it has been a kind of very difficult journey. I must admit that it has been a very, very difficult journey because, first of all, if you're coming from that background, then you don't have confidence, and many times this confidence matters. So either you're going to class, then every class, other people can take it for granted, and that is again advantage I can count on. So other people can take every class as a granted because they are coming from certain exposure to English education, and not necessarily they are going to be asked that kinds of question. But coming from marginalized OBC background and teaching in one of the very elite kinds of department in India, that question always comes for you: that are you able to prove your credibility or not? So every class I have to prove my credibility, that whether I am able to teach or not, whether I am able to prove my credibility or not. So this question may not matter for many of the faculty members because they become very normative in that way, that part of that community, that okay, so take for many things for granted. But perhaps both advantage and disadvantage for me, that I cannot take anything for granted before going to the class. And I remember that many times when I tried to do something like that, I have failed completely. So I need double preparation, many times triple preparation, to prove my credibility, to prove my community that whatever I have achieved, whatever I am trying to do, I am trying my best. And that is also that one should do. And I think I will also appeal from students who are watching this video and coming from those backgrounds. So it is not just about getting the job, and it is not just about using the opportunity. It is also about what you are going to do with after getting this opportunity, how you are going to treat that as space. You have to set the model, you have to become the moral authority for your own community.
I will use the very diction of JNU as also a student of JNU. The way you have said it, one sentence is just framed up in my mind, that for you, it seems that every class happens to be class struggle.
Yeah, of course.
In a real sense.
In real sense, very real.
Every class is a representation or kind of the live display, show, exhibition of class struggle that you do. Well, coming back
I
to...
just would like to add one more thing, because we are discussing about... so suppose that when I don't... a class happens when you are not satisfied with your class, and I feel really difficult that day to even I keep thinking about, oh, today I have not delivered very good class. And that really haunts you many times. And therefore I'm thinking that, just suggesting that in terms of, and because you also, it's not that maybe other faculty members are thinking about you, or it's not that other people's, other faculty members are thinking in that way, that okay, because you come from this background and therefore you have to prove, not necessarily, but that also happens. It is not to deny that. That also happens. But because you have come from this struggling kinds of background, many times you also try your best to prove that I should not be counted some insincere teacher, or you should not be counted like that teacher who is not delivering its own kinds of some kinds of expectations that teacher have to be proved.
After the publication of your very popular book quite recently, Body on the Barricades, how often do you get invited by other universities as resource person?
Yeah, so last semester was a very, very busy semester for me. So I can say that it was a very busy semester because I was not expecting this kinds of response on this book. But again, it was a huge, massive response that I can say now. And of course, now I can say that almost every one day I have given some talk somewhere in some university, in some departments. So it was a very, very busy departments. From very private university to remote distance public universities to some kinds of community educational community centers. So they all have invited, and especially generally people who are coming from academic background, people who are coming from even as students, they were taking a lot of interest in this book, and therefore precisely that it was able to break the boundaries of academic, popular, and many other things that we can talk about.
Okay. In Delhi or NCR, close to NCR, and which is like Ghaziabad, Noida, Greater Noida, and Gurugram, Panipat, Sunipat, all these places have now become almost a kind of epicenter of the best learning, and these best so-called excellent learning are promoted by private institutions. How often do you get an invitation as a resource person or keynote speaker or chief guest by these private universities in comparison to other professors of JNU?
Yeah, so I think I can say that yes, if you're talking about a model private university and brand private university, then at least in 1-2 university I have got quite a number of invitations from those university. So it also many times depends that who knows about your work, and if you know the person or areas of experience area, so you have performing arts department, performance studies department, so there is likely that you are going to get more invitation. So it would be quite difficult to say that I got the invitation, but how to see this invitation, that we can talk about maybe on the later page of the interview.
Okay. Now, a very direct question. You wrote a Facebook post almost 2 days ago where you have directly questioned the ethics, functional ethics of the university like Ashoka University and Jindal University, Global Jindal University. Ashoka University itself has projected as the university fighting for academic autonomy and academic freedom. Ashoka University's professors, like several professors, some notable professors have been targeted even by the Indian state, BJP, RSS. You have, despite belonging to the same field, you have questioned that Ashoka University, which has earned a huge name and fame among academics of all class and sections.
Yeah, so thank you so much for bringing this question, because first time I realized that Ashoka is a brand.
Okay.
Because about when it comes to JNU, then everyone can criticize whenever you want to criticize. So you have right-wing criticism that will say that this is anti-national university. You have liberal criticism that will say that okay, you are not doing enough or something, we are going somewhere. You have anti-caste kinds of criticism who will say that it has become a caste village in that sense, and we are all part of. And many times, even if they don't criticize, we criticize ourselves.
Okay.
So then that becomes the part of the culture.
In
JNU, so criticism has been very much part of and it's not just happening after 2014. Of course, attack, or more one can say more physical attack, and that kinds of direct attacks have increased. But at the same time, this kinds of criticism has been part of our educational system, where young one may like JNU model, one may not like JNU model. One can criticize the way JNU treat many of those social questions and things like that. So a lot of criticism, and I think we have accepted those criticism. We have tried to engage with those criticism, but still we also have challenges that perhaps we have not dealt with. But when I wrote this post, and when I started getting messages from faculties and students from Ashoka University and Jindal University, then I realized that how brand matters. It is about public universities, about brand. So you cannot tarnish those brands. Those brands should be without any criticism. Those brands should be and this is also about problem with the whole claims of the liberal universities, that we are providing you liberal space where you can exercise your freedom, where you can exercise your freedom of expressions. But we know that 2-3 incidents have happened recently, both in Ashoka and Jindal, where where faculty member wrote one article, and then how administrator of Ashoka University had dealt with that faculty member. So what I'm also happy and sad with this whole situation, that there was a whole, because it is not just right now, attack is not only coming from right wing or right side. That is very obvious, that we are facing on everyday basis, day and night basis. So that has become a part of our usual life. But again, the university spaces that supposed to give us liberal space, and not to us, to that again a kinds of elite crowds. It was also freedom for the elite crowds, not for everyone, because others are not even part of that system. Others cannot go and have education in their system. But again, they are not even able to maintain that. So if you are thinking about it in terms of this whole idea, the liberal exercise or some kinds of liberal notion of freedom, I will still say that public university remains better. Day and night, I can write article. My many faculty members of JNU, they are very critical of state policies, government approaches they are writing. I don't think we have still faced those kinds of curtailment. So now the question comes that why public university are still able to maintain, despite of all horrendous kinds of attack and things, are still able to maintain some sphere of criticism. And why Ashoka, for that matter, Ashoka University or Jindal for matter, just 1 to 3 instances and you are collapsing. Like when you are not able to provide the basic freedom of education or freedom of exercises that one can talk about, exercise of freedom that one can talk about, and that really exposed that whole system. So at least in other parts of the world, what you can do that if you have private university, they have their own mandate, they have their own exercises, and at least they are able to provide you that a space where one can exercise freedom, liberal kinds of understanding and things like that. But precisely because this is a country where feudalism, very feudal sense of corporate business is very much there, and therefore they are going to not exercise you that freedom also. So I'm not saying that. So one is that we are talking about larger questions in which Ashoka, Jindal, and they all are facing this crisis, that whether you are able to provide basic kinds of a space where one can exercise freedom, one can exercise what they want to write, one want to write public opinions in that way, on Twitter post in that way. And I don't think Ashoka, Jindal and all these model university are able to give that space to their faculty members and to that students. And 2-3 incidents have clearly made that if you are going to do that, then we are not going to tolerate it. And that is very, very clear. Second, coming back to this question that, but again they have attitude. It is about attitude of the elites. It is about the taste. So it's not about how much one is publishing, how much one is able to educate the students, what kind of quality of education you are providing. It is also about, largely branding is about attitude. What is your attitude towards education? How you see the public university. So I hear all the stories that what happens at Ashoka and Jindal, that every day in classroom there will be a joke about JNU. Like, don't try to be like JNU. Don't try to be like a public university. Don't behave like a public university students. And so what ultimately you are trying to say? That don't behave like a public university students. Don't behave like a commoners. So it means that you are already establishing some notion of hierarchy within your education system, and that is the brand that you want to create. So branding is not necessarily coming because you have great faculty members. You have some exceptional faculty members, no doubt about it. But it is also about that how faculty members are going to behave, how you are going to exercise some kinds of freedom and things, what you are going to talk about, what you are not going to talk about. And there are many questions that one can talk about. And therefore I think when I posted this criticism, then one was about so many times you get invitation, so and many times you also get paid. It's not about honorarium or getting paid, or they are also going to pay you honorarium. But again, this is not the answer, the question I'm trying to ask there. One is that, of course, Jindal is very clear, where that we
don't give any
honorarium. That very clear.
Not to anybody.
Not to anybody. So now question comes from where, what gives you this kinds of sense that when you are going to invite some faculty members from Europe, America, and those kinds of those kinds of colonial countries or those kinds of European countries, then you are going to treat them very differently. It also happens in terms of that who are going to get jobs. So if you are having a degree from outside, from foreign university, most likely you are going to get the job. Most likely you are going to get better kinds of position there. And that also branding. What is branding about? Branding is about who have that exposure in foreign university, who had the exposure. What was your exposure, educational exposure? So where you were studied in Delhi University or where you had your education in Patna University, that really matters more for Ashoka and Jindal and these kinds of model than whether students coming from Patna University are able to do something better or not. That really is not the question. Yeah, so coming back to this question of honorarium, I posted these things because last time I attended few seminars in Jindal, and generally when you go to very smaller university where they're really facing huge crisis in terms of fund cut and everything, they try to give you some kinds of respectful kinds of they respectfully will invite you. Their approach would be very different. Even they are paying 1,900, it does not matter. It is all about how you are going to get treated there, and that is the one thing. My problem with the Ashoka Jindal kinds of model, that generally they have this whole attitude that okay, if you are coming from private public university, then they are going to maintain very different attitudes. If you are coming from foreign university, degree from foreign university, then your weightage is something very different. So now the question comes that is it about a scholarship? Is it about a scholarship that you are talking about, or is it about some faces, some kinds of configurations, or racial, not racial one can say, but one can also talk about racial casteist kinds of composition that Ashoka maintains or Jindal maintains.
You have been part of progressive politics in your student days in JNU for a very long time, and your writings, your books, your articles are celebrated by all these progressive sections people. Progressive sections professors have been very outspoken in criticizing privatization in the field of education. You have also done it. You also believe in anti-privatization should be public funded education. Now, why do you think after the retirement of these progressive professors, when they were in jobs, they preferred public universities, but after they retired, immediately they joined Ashoka University? So you have just now questioned Ashoka University and Global Jindal University to develop themselves as a brand. Who made Ashoka University and Global Jindal University a brand? Is it not people of your section, progressive section?
Yeah, so now I'm getting very direct accusation. Yeah, so yes, that is also the criticism. So that is the point I would like to tell you, that it is like JNU and public universities are not only coming under attack by the right-wing forces. It's liberal, are also liberal scholarship or liberal scholars who have been part of the so-called claiming progressive scholarship, and also defender of the public education. Have many speeches where many of them have tried to defend the public education. Now this whole idea is that JNU is a gone case. Now every time that go to any intellectual kinds of meeting and that kinds of things. So I went to Sigal conference in Kolkata where all the stalwarts were there. Yesterday I was in Sultan Studies kinds of with historians who are quite engaged in subaltern studies kinds of scholarship. The first question, JNU bacha hua hai?
Okay.
So what you are trying to say?
Is it still breathing?
Yeah, is it JNU is still breathing? JNU is still surviving? So point is that, one that you have very direct kinds of perceptions are getting created. Old perceptions are getting created. It does not mean I'm not saying that JNU is not under attack. I still have several departments, and especially we can talk about a student's composition. Our students' compositions have radically changed with the coming of OBC reservation, full implementation of ST reservation, and now the students that you see in class, that was never the case. So what you are ultimately trying to say that by saying
never the case means now they are more diverse, or previously they were more diverse?
They are now more diverse. Okay. They are asking more difficult, more I will say. They are engaged, their engagement, their concerns about the society, many of those things have been quite new for me, and that one need to recognize. So despite of all the difficulties that JNU is facing, what we are witnessing something new or newness in the emergence of that new students crowd, the new students composition, and that is quite rare. I can say it's rare in any university in India that we can talk about. But when you are trying to demean the university, so one is that of course we know that right wing is trying to get away, and so we know that so you have very later implementation of reservation that has happened, and you see that both are happening together. One, that implementation of reservation and collapse of the university. Both are almost happening at the same time, and you are getting right-wing attack. You are also getting liberal kinds of perception that are getting created. So now liberals, scholars who are generations who are coming from those social elites background, quite exposure, now they will talk about package, how much package you are getting. So they're talking in terms of package. They're talking about defending the public universities. Second question would come that, okay, general point would come from that side, that because we are not getting any jobs in public university, and therefore we have no option except to apply in these kinds of private university. Right, we all understand this crisis. But again, then how you're going to, but again you have section, for example, the sections who are coming from reserve background, section who are not necessarily coming from social elites background, they also don't have option. They're also looking for jobs. So how you are making this choice at a juncture where completely this whole stigma attached to the private university, a stigma attached to that kinds of education, where you have the whole movement, some kinds of aims to transform the education system, to transform the classroom. how you are going to transform that one. And then, so is it about now? So are you saying, when you are saying that because we are not getting jobs, you can still apply the jobs here, but when you are not getting jobs, you are shifting that. So are you saying that now we are just dedicated to some kinds of career? You are just oriented towards career, or career becomes the ultimate aim, and you are not more interested in transforming the education per se? But again, one can say that okay, we are trying to transform the those spaces, and that one can still recognize. So it is more complex questions. It is right that the crisis has come for them also, those sections also. But I think I was just still hoping, because they were our stars, they were our figures, progressive figures. I was just still hoping that they are going to defend the education till their last breath.
Most of your star and progressive figures are known to have joined Ashoka universities and accepted the position of vice chancellorship and dean and registrar post retirement, because in private universities there is no limitation of, there is no age bar. So they join at lucrative packages, as you have mentioned yourself. Are you implicitly claiming your stars to be anti-reservations?
Okay, yeah, of course, I think we need to talk about those questions also, because precisely because if you're talking about what has happened to the history department in JNU, what has happened to the economics department in JNU. So one is that, of course, right wing are trying to do their own appointments, and not necessarily for them, even merit criteria, eligibility criteria, educational criteria really matters, because that is not necessarily their aim. But problem is that question comes that why you try to scuttle this whole idea of the reservation when it came first time, it came in several phases, and now if you see that where these people are joining, what happened to history, prestigious history department, then for long term you have not implemented reservation. For long term you have not accepted faculty members from those sites. You were quite had this whole appreciation about that we have some points, for the people who are coming from educationally backward society, people who are coming from backwards district education, students who are coming from distance kinds of colleges. So you have all the provision. But if you really wanted to make it more inclusive, then what was the problem of accepting this model of reservation that was much more inclusive?
But the same people who once opposed reservation policies in the public university like JNU, same professors have shifted, joined to all these private universities. Still there are professors of your standing, understanding and standing, intellectual standing, also somewhere appear desperate to go and give talks to all these prestigious universities, branded universities like Ashoka and Global Jindal. Don't you think that professors like you can equally be taken or maybe understood as the complicit part of treating? Is there any hunger for getting popular, desire to be very popular, to match with the past glory of your so-called progressive stars who were once anti-reservationists? That is why you people are also being invited so often at Ashoka, Global Jindal and other private universities. Don't you think so?
No, so remember that when I posted this on Facebook and Twitter, then at least on Facebook I got very good comment from a faculty member and friend from Jamia, and he said that is their argument, that it is not that they are inviting, they are giving you brand. By getting invitation from Ashoka and Jindal, you are...
It's a declaration of brand, that you are a great professor.
You are a great professor, you have some scholarship. So you are basically, they are giving you a space to show that you are also a brand, you are also among them. At least you have some credibility.
In future they might charge you.
So in future, so this whole idea that in their kinds of imagination of education, you are still exist. So that a space really matters. And many times they may give you a certificate saying that you are a great professor. And that's so why you are talking about this on radio person. So anyway, they are adding to your brand, they are adding to your CV. Is it not that great that they are doing to you? But the question comes that, so this is one way of thinking about what that really matters. That is really what is exactly happening now. So it is about, so you have I'm also part of JNU Teachers Association many times, another executive council. Many times we are not getting good application. Now question comes that why people who are going to Shivnadar, when they are going to Ashoka, why they are not trying to come to JNU? That model educational. They are the people who are still claiming that JNU used to be the model. Now for them, this is not the model. So, but again, you cannot say that Ashoka is your model. Talking from the same position, from progressive position, you cannot talk about that. Then if JNU is not the model, then Ashoka is the model. Still, I don't think that time has come. Maybe that time will come in the future. But the point is that why at least you are not trying to come to JNU, why you are not giving your application in JNU, why you are not so, and then this is, and I think this is the whole perceptions are getting created a lot about yes, JNU is facing a lot of crisis, but still the perception, if you are talking about the perception, then perception is worse than what we are facing. It is becoming more worse than, and therefore we are not getting good applications. We are same talk believers in this circle, progressive circle, liberal circle, that okay, JNU was a kind of glory at a point of time, and now JNU is a gone case. So now talk, I would like to have a very clear analysis. So why JNU is a gone case? Because maybe that one can say that those
people from diverse groups have
joined. That is why JNU is a gone case now, because more students have come from diverse background. More you have faculty members have come from diverse background. You have more diversity than any of your university that you are working, and therefore JNU is a gone case. If you are counting other factors, why you are not also counting these factors? In many of the department, you have first appointment of tribal teacher, first appointment of OBC teacher, and then which brand you used to talk about. What was the nature of your brand? So I think when you are talking about the day of the glory, then we would also like to know that what was the day of glory about. When you are talking now about the day of the brand name, then we also need to know about that. What is the brand, exact brand that you are talking about? Is it what kinds of brand you are talking about? Which is it about democracy? Is it about exercise of some kinds of freedom of expression? Is it about some kinds of social inclusiveness that you are talking about? What is the meaning of this brand that you are talking about? Or are you talking about new liberal brand that once you used to criticize?
You have
just, I would add one more point. So recently, I think Ashoka, maybe Jindal, now they have come with the kinds of more American model. So they will talk about, we also encourage students from deprived background to apply, or social kinds of economically backward extremely big background to apply for MA and BA program. Great. So what I'm trying to say that even in JNU at this height of glory, this charitable approach was the approach for this marginalized section. So you wanted to give some pointers. So okay, you are doing some kinds of kripa, you are doing some kinds of charity. That was the approach. What again these universities are trying to imitate or emulate, that okay, we are doing some kind of study. If you are so interested, if you are so really about making your space inclusive, if you are really thinking about these communities, give some rights. I'm not saying that 27%, 30%, 5% right. Not about charity, that okay, we also encourage students from this background to apply. You give 5%, you give 10%, you give 20%.
But the right. Give
them the right, not the charity. Give them a space, not some kinds of kripa that one can talk about.
When you decided to write the post mentioning clearly names of two most prestigious private universities, Ashoka and Global Jindal, didn't you get a sense of fear in you that after reading this post, as you have yourself said, that these universities now started to certify other professors working in public university, whether they are great or not? Didn't you get the sense of fear that you will equally be targeted by these private universities and you may be barred, you may never be invited again to speak at these platforms, private universities, university platforms, and your publication field may also get affected, because publication field and institutions both are owned up at the end by people who are not into education but in the business of education. Did you get this fear?
Yeah. So the best part, I will tell you that when I got some kinds of things that okay, but again we have paid the honorarium, this is not the right depiction of our brand, or this is not the right portrayal of the brand. We also got a lot many comments that you wrote right, this or that, and not necessarily from the students and faculty members from public university, from Ashoka and Jindal University.
Okay, from within.
Within.
They endorsed your statement.
They endorse and they know that this is what is happening. Many of them because they are under constraint, because they cannot speak out many things, and therefore they know that this is happening. And therefore also got messages where they are saying that yes, this is right, like no, this is not the way that we should treat faculty members from like no, anybody, like we are inviting them. So I don't think that is the case. And even if that is the case, that like you are going to get barred and things, then that has been our aim like many times, creating a confrontation for right cause, for like no right, creating some kinds of more democratic space. And that is what we are doing as a part of humanities, as a part of activism, as a part of our scholarship. I don't care that whether if this post or for this kinds of a statement where like no one is trying to make more inclusive space, when one is trying to make some kinds of democratic demand, if that is getting curtailed, then for some reasons and for some kinds of like no barring, that okay, now we are not going to invite you, it does not care. It does not care for me that like no how they are going to take this statement. But this statement was also in a point, if they are taking that kinds of criticism, that make your a space more inclusive, make your a space more meaningful, at least make it liberal that you are claiming. No one is saying that you make it like no social inclusive space, then make it more liberal, that the liberal brand that you are trying to claim. So make your brand as a brand itself.
Okay, last question of today's interview I'm going to ask. What is the future of JNU in your perspective? How do you see JNU's future? Because most of the people have started saying, as you are yourself, you have just said, that old professors or the progressive professors have started. Is JNU still breathing? How long do you think JNU will breathe?
Yeah, so JNU of course is going through very like no transformation. There is no doubt about it, and it has several phases. So when JNU came in kinds of like no this whole idea of the JNU coming into existence, that was one phase. When JNU got like no faculty members who were coming from different backgrounds, but also from same background, different kinds of like maybe regions, but again almost from the same background and
same class
background, or same social elites background. Then that was the another phase. But also with these things, the new like no social inclusive policy and things, JNU has gone through a lot of like significant transformation. So what is going to be the future of JNU? And the way I can imagine, one is that like we are getting more social inclusive students composition that is really dynamic, and that is really special for me. So I can say that when I was doing MA in the department of the School of Arts and Aesthetics, when I am teaching here now, it was a two different composition of students that we can talk about, two different kinds of questions that one were interrogating that time and now they were interrogating. And I think this is also about discourse, because one of the things that we are talking about, like coming of liberal universities, and many faculties are joining, either not necessarily in Ashoka, they are not coming back from foreign university, they are like better trying to stay there, they are not coming back, their children have almost like going to settle there. And I think also discomfort with the discourses. So one that we have discussed about larger issues, but also discomforting discourses that new compositions are trying to create. So maybe like you are going to talk about subaltern studies, post-colonialism, you are going to talk about some other kinds of European experiences and things, and here students will ask you very basic questions that okay, but what about our experiences, but what about this society? And I think because it is also, they have not this like these social elites of these universities are for like larger in public university in India for some time, they had never faced these kinds of challenges of these discourses. So I think it is not just about teaching at Ashoka, teaching at some American university. It is also about not directly facing these discourses and not confronting. Like you come, you confront. Like it's not about like upper caste, lower caste, that kinds of discourses. Like if I'm honest and integrity, having some kinds of integrity with my scholarship, I'm ready to say that okay, my position that time was very like bad, or maybe like very like but very reactionary, and today I'm trying to accept my like mistake and things like that. So I think also the fear is not just about, so maybe in Ashoka they are feeling more comfortable space, at Jindal they are feeling mainly comfortable space because it's the same discourse, it's the same kinds of crowd without getting challenged in terms of the real radical discourses, more inclusive discourses, and that also giving them comfort at various level, and I think that is also the reasons, that is also one of the major reasons that now people are feeling more comfort at Ashoka, at Jindal, or at many European and American universities, because now the discourse have changed, and that is all. So in terms of discourse, that in JNU in future the discourse have changed, and the new composition, new students composition that coming, they are radically shifting the discourses on everyday basis. And I think they are going to be the leader of the scholarship in the future. Despite have all the brands, you can create Ashoka, you can create Jindal, but these are the people who are going.
JNU will remain unmatched.
Unmatched because not unmatched because it is a brand. Okay. Because or it is a merit kinds of some kinds of vetoes in that way, meritorious veto. No, because if you are going to get more diversified, if you are going to have more diverse discourses, then future is going to be more in your side, because ultimately we are talking about more democratization of the future, and I see that those students are going to shape the future. It is not necessarily the students of Ashoka, not necessarily the students maybe having some kinds of education at all the great university of the world, but students where you have more diverse crowd, more diverse composition, students who are more coming from struggling and coming for experiences. Those experiences, I think they are the leader of the future in our scholarship, and that is where I have a lot of hope still from JNU left. So it is not yet diminished, still it is not yet over. New phase has started, and that will shape the future of the scholarship, and that I can guarantee, at least in some terms.
You are hearing Dr. Brahmprakash, who teaches at School of Arts and Aesthetics, Jawaharlal Nehru University, one of the most prestigious universities, not just in India, but globally recognized center of arts, culture, and popular culture per se. Well, he has pointed out, interestingly, the same point last time a very renowned global JNU scholar has said, not at any random place, but after that scholar was conferred with the Nobel Prize for Economics, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee. Dr. Abhijit Banerjee surprisingly has made the same remark about the beauty of diversity that JNU struggles to ensure, where students from diverse background, diverse group, diverse culture happen to sit in the same classroom, and a very different worldviews are presented in one room. So Abhijit Banerjee has said this, that it was not because his previous education models, which has inspired him to work for the people of global people, or we can say the people of the world, but it was his interaction with a tribal student, one of his classmates, during his JNU days, which burned a flame of strong desire to pursue the academics seriously, and that JNU scholar later on succeeded in winning the Nobel Prize for Economics. Thank you very much, Dr. Brahmprakash. It was a very interesting discussion with you, and I hope our audience would listen this interview and would also try to understand the challenges which are posed in front of the private universities and public universities of repute like Jawaharlal Nehru universities. Once again, I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for again giving me this opportunity, and I'm very happy to share my views. Hope you all like it. Thank you.
Thank you.